do what you want to 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 do.
Okay, I think you're going to enjoy this panel. This is the digital debate. We're going to talk about how to effectively use the tools that are out there, what's changed, how paradigms are getting crushed, and how the old models are getting thrown out the window, and you've got to think differently, as Steve Jobs used to say. So to kick things off, someone who I've known for a while and have watched his career with much admiration, Oliver Luckett's going to set the tone, give us a little bit of a talk. Oliver is the founder and leader and creative force behind The Audience, which is really changing the way things are done. Do you want to do it from here, or you want to do it up there?
I didn't know if you wanted to.
No, you can. So, The Audience is working with how many artists right now?
About 600.
About 600.
Hey, everyone. This works.
You bring him up?
Hello?
What number is it?
Number 3.
Number 3.
Hello?
There you
Okay,
go.
great. Hey, guys. So I'm Oliver Luckett. They asked me to get things kind of kicked off here because what we're doing at The Audience, I think, touches a lot of people,
Here's 100
either directly in this room or tangentially. The Audience was an idea that was born out of a discussion between Ari Emanuel, WME, myself, and a guy named Sean Parker, who many of you know from Napster and Spotify and Facebook, kind of a controversial figure in the world of music, having really been one of the impetuses for breaking apart the traditional model of music. So the conversation began, I was at Disney, and I was a relatively, I don't know how to say this, disruptive person at Disney. I was brought in by Bob Iger, the CEO at the time, because I had this little company called DigiSend, and literally all we did was take movie trailers that the studios thought, well, the studios, really their legal departments, believed that if you put a trailer on YouTube, then suddenly they owned all of the rights to the movie. So at the time, companies like Warner Brothers and Fox and Viacom and Disney refused to allow their movie trailers to be up on platforms like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and others. And so we had this little company called DigiSend, and all it did was take those trailers and put them up into the internet before the legal department of the studio could take them down, because they believed that that's where the audience was, and that's, you know, where you always say you kind of fish where the fish are. And so out of this, I started realizing how ridiculous the old model, especially the legal models of content, were in a new world of frictionless distribution. And so Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, brought me in to be his insurgent. I remember when I first met him, he said how silly it was that our company even existed, because it was really the problem of the studio and the sickness of the old model that led to our ability to be a business. So we go into Disney and we start shaking things up and changing things. And in the movie model, you know, it was very simple. You started building relationships directly to fans inside of social platforms. So when I met Ari, really at the behest of Sean, we started talking, and you know, WME is a company that represents thousands of different artists, whether they're film and television and whatnot, and I didn't know a whole lot about the business, but it was shocking to me when I started doing a little bit of research. I remember taking a sample of 400 artists that were part of the WME family, and just going into Facebook and looking at them and seeing, you know, do these people have presence? And if they have presence, you know, what are they doing? Are they embracing these relationships that can exist inside of these platforms? And I was stunned. Out of 400 artists, they were connected, they had about 110,000 fake pages connected to about 1.2 billion people. And this was at a time when Facebook was only 600 million people in size. So basically that meant that you had double duplication of the entire audience of Facebook off of just 400 artists. But the most shocking thing is that none of them had built any official presence inside of these platforms. It was all created by fans. And so when I saw this opportunity, I left Disney and created The Audience. And what we've learned over the last 2 years has been pretty stunning. we now represent about 600 total brands, entertainers inside of these platforms. And when I say we represent them, we're actually a partner. What we do is we help them maximize their reach and engagement inside of these platforms. And the way you do that is by funding great content. Every month, we work with artists to create about 25,000 pieces of content, whether it's Steve Aoki in building out, all of the different memes that exist inside of his brand universe, whether it's Cake Face or the Aoki Jump or the family photo and the tag yourself. Those things have become amazingly important to an artist like Steve, who started off as a great DJ with a great show, but has now moved on to actually be an internet celebrity. Every month, he reaches about 10 to 15 million unique people just inside of Facebook. And those are people that we know everything about them, because inside of a platform like Facebook comes their identity, comes their affinities, comes their relationship status, who they like, what they like. And so we use that data to craft the content that then entertains and excites a whole new group of people. And so for him, it has become an extraordinarily invaluable way to build his brand and to build his direct connection with the audience. The same thing exists in the movie business. If you're going to release a movie in America, it costs about $5 to $25 million in guaranteed media dollars that you must spend in TV ads and in theater and doing print and doing radio. And that's really a requirement of the industry. And we just released a movie in America called Spring Breakers. I don't know if many of you have seen it. It's a great movie. If you haven't, it's got a great soundtrack and a great cast. But we changed the business completely. We took a risk and said, you know what? We're actually not going to do any traditional media. We're not going to do any advertising. And it actually was a fight. The theaters were like, we're not going to let you in the theaters. How do we know that anyone's going to show up? And sure enough, just inside of social platforms like Twitter and Facebook, we launched the movie. They forced us to launch it in only 4 theaters at first. They turned out to be the highest per-screen grossing average of any movie in the last 2 years and top 20 of all-time movies. Once we showed them we could do that, then they allowed us to be in 1,000 theaters. And so literally for under $1 million, we launched a movie that's now made $17 million at the box office and is now going to go into a tremendous home video run. And so, that's these cracks in the system that we're starting to see. And the same thing exists in the music business. The old traditional idea of selling recorded music has been the predominant driver of the economics of this business. And you guys are all working in a world where you know that selling the music is not the primary driver of success or fame. It involves a mixture of live events, of YouTube, of great video content, great remixes, great mixtapes. And so the way we look at this business now is if you focus on the things that people like, and you can measure it, and you can build upon it, and keep a constant relationship with an artist, and not focus on these legacy systems that you're really saddled with, right? All the old rules of that business, then you have an amazing opportunity to build something new and unique, and to actually monetize at every step along the way. Whether it's creating your own Vivo by monetizing your own YouTube channel, or building your own merch that you sell direct to fans, or building your own event architecture and having great tropes that exist in the storytelling of your events, very much like what Steve has done. That to us is the future of this business. It's actually not the future, it's kind of the present. I think we all can look around and agree that these things are important. And so, I think what we're going to talk about today is what are those tools that allow us to deepen that connection with an audience, and really to hopefully get you to walk out of here and have a new set of values in this business, because what we're really forced with now and what we really have as an opportunity is to build an entirely new business with new values, but entirely new revenue streams on top of it, if we take it seriously and if we don't look in the past so much. This year has been phenomenal. If you look at the juxtaposition of somebody like Daft Punk spending tens of millions of dollars in traditional media, not really making any new art, right? the album itself is new art, but there have been no great music videos that have come out of it. There's been no, great art that's really emerged from it. Whereas you look at other artists that are just constantly building art and doing something new. And instead of spending money on media dollars, they're actually spending money on art and building interesting things for the consumer. So I'm going to turn it over to the panel, and hopefully we'll have a lively discussion about this. Thank you.
So, to give you some context on who the panelists are, each panelist is going to spend a couple minutes and give you an idea of what their company is up to and the tools that they provide. So, we're going to start with Andre.
Hi, my name's Anjay. I come from a company called Free Mavens. My name looks like my parents fell on a keyboard when I was born, but luckily it's easy to pronounce. The whole gig about Free Mavens is we are all about unleashing fans and advocates. And I come from the world of Saatchi and big media budgets and all that stuff, and I just wanted to flip it and do a judo move. And what we did is we've gone back to purpose, which is what people are passionate about, what people care about. And in this space, it's about understanding where influence comes from, where those little bubbles of heat come to the surface. And one of our tools is Maven mapping, where we map out, we listen empathetically through a bunch of social listening tools, so you can find ways, creative ways, for artists to engage in between those visceral moments of a new album release or a great night of music, and building those digital and social bridges. That's the place we play. And the cool bit about it is liberating because it's respectful not only to the artist, but it's respectful to the fan. Because when you got tons of these around in the world and everyone has a Gutenberg press in their pocket, it's all about authenticity, it's transparency, and that means it elevates not only the art itself, but how people engage with the art. So that's why I'm excited to be part of this panel, to not only find fans, but more importantly, unleash them throughout the year 24/7.
Carter, you're up.
Okay. Maybe I should start by talking a little bit about my personal relation to dance music, because although I don't think it's any different than the average kid who grew up in upstate New York, it's probably atypical from the people in this room. I didn't grow up going to warehouse parties. I was actually a big fan of what was called alternative rock in the 80s. In fact, as much as I love Fatboy Slim and respect him, I will always think of him as the bassist for the House Martins. I used to listen to the House Martins on tape on my Walkman while I ran all the time. So I didn't start listening to electronic music until the kind of late 90s. And it wasn't because I was a raver, it was because I was a cryptographer, which is a fancy word for a really nerdy software engineer. And I think I remember there was, Digital Empire, there was some like compilation, and I bought the Ministry of Sounds, the annual CDs that were coming out. I think like Tall Paul and maybe Pete Tong was even doing them back then. But I put them on to code. I would listen to them for, 8 hours a day or 12 or 16 hours a day while I was coding. And I fell in love with the driving beat. It kind of put me in a trance, and it really spoke to me viscerally. And that was my relation. And I tell this story because I think it's easy at conferences like this to sometimes forget that there's a whole world of people out there who will never set foot in a club or go to a festival, or rarely. But they love this music, and they have a personal, visceral connection to this music. But they're also not going to go to SoundCloud and look up the latest mix. They're not going to read Resident Advisor. They're probably not going to do anything proactive at all. In fact, about 2% of self-described avid music listeners actually read anything about music. That's 2%. So, if we don't figure out a way to present, there's a lot of great music in dance music and electronic music or whatever you want to call it. If we don't figure out a way to present it to those people in a way that matches their consumption habits, they're just never going to discover a lot of music that I just luckily stumbled upon. And that's really what we're trying to build at Mox. Mox is a 24/7 streaming, scheduled music television network online. So it's, music. We have music news every 15 minutes, artist interviews, music videos, coverage of festivals. Think MTV circa 1985. Without downtown Julie Brown, unfortunately, I couldn't get her to do anything. And it's the idea behind Mox is basically, you go to the site, you don't have to know anything, you don't have to search for anything, you don't have to read anything. You just get there and it plays, and you do nothing. And to be honest, it's not going to appeal to people who want to dive really, really deep. Our goal is to really broaden the audience and hopefully connect people with music they wouldn't have otherwise discovered. So that's what Mox is in a nutshell.
Okay. Mr. Seth Goldstein, you were up.
Okay. I'm Seth Goldstein, at Seth at Twitter, and it's DJ-Z.com. To Carter's point, I guess the way I was exposed to this universe, I was a co-founder of a company, unfortunately it's not available here, called Turntable.fm. And it was pretty clear early on that the EDM channels and some of these artists I'd never heard of were blowing up. One of the best rooms was Coding Soundtrack. And Turntable is the first place where you can experience music together at the same time in a virtual world. I have an 11 and a 14-year-old. My 11-year-old came home from school last year and said, Dad, what's dubstep? And I was over his shoulder looking, and it's kind of a mess out there. I got him a Tractor S2 for his birthday, and he has a SoundCloud account now and has his own little loyal following where he does tributes to Flostradamus and Diplo. And a couple years ago, I was at Burning Man and heard Bass Nectar in the Desert. And so these three things kind of converge in my mind. And we're building mobile products for EDM fans. And I hope for the next generation of great DJs that emerge from them. I've got a couple slides. Keep going. So this is kind of how it looks. It's a platform of apps that are very much lean forward, and then a website that's much more lean back. And I think uniquely, these apps talk to each other. So if you create a face using DJ Face, it can become your avatar on the website. You can create your own DJ profile page. If you make a mix and crossfader, you can share that to SoundCloud and share that with your friends on the website. Keep going. Three trends I think that we're trying to take advantage of. One is what I call the fractionalization of music behavior. What albums are to me, I think tracks are to this next generation, which is they don't listen to full tracks. They listen to remixes, they want to put together stems and loops, and we're trying to build a system and a community that's built around that. Obviously, more and more people want to become DJs. The barriers to entry are getting lower. Software is moving from the desktop to mobile apps. And obviously, we're seeing desktop software in general move towards mobile. And we're investing heavily in Silicon Valley in native iOS developers and Android developers. Our website is just filled with awesomeness. It's fun. It's definitely trying to be more mass market, to Carter's point. It's probably not for a lot of us here. It's eye candy. Every DJ has an illustration. And the number one feature request is that people wanted to create their own. We have a lot of top 10 franchises that are very popular. We've tried to cover up-and-comers like Bauer, like Flostradamus, like Uzi. And we've done some live stream hangouts with Flux Pavilion and Boys Noise. Two apps, actually three apps, but the most recent, if you go to the App Store today, you'll see both of our apps are featured. Crossfader It's a really dynamic, fun experience where you can mix 2 songs simply by moving your body using the accelerometer and the gyroscope. It's got a ton of 5-star ratings. Next. DJ Face came out last week. It's trivial from a programming perspective compared to Crossfader, and yet it seems to be much more popular because it's really, really easy. It's the #1 app right now in the App Store under Entertainment. And that's it. Thank you.
Cool. Nicole?
There's.
You'll be up here in a moment.
Hi. Hi, yeah, so my name's Nikhil Shah, and I'm one of the co-founders of Mixcloud. So, yeah, it seems like everyone's telling their stories, so I'll tell mine. I started Mixcloud around about 4 years ago, largely born out of kind of personal frustration. I've been DJing for a long time, buying records since I was 15, putting on club nights at university. Started off as a hip-hop kid, got into dance music a few years later. And I was talking to a friend of mine in the pub one day, and we were just really, really fed up with the ecosystem online of sharing our mixes and discovering great content from DJs and radio presenters. I'm a firm believer in discovering music through experts. There's so many amazing, passionate people out there who are creating mixes, who are putting together radio shows and playlists. And at the time, a lot of the web was kind of converging towards like kind of fairly mundane and fairly bland algorithmic discovery, things like Pandora and Last.fm, which are great services, but just kind of take the human out of it. And we wanted to put the human back into it. So we decided to build Mixcloud, which was all about trying to build the best platform to discover music through experts and through tastemakers, and to help those tastemakers find an audience. So yeah, that's been launched for around about 3.5 years. And we're not just about dance music. We are a platform for music discovery. So we have, jazz music, we have world music, we have avant-garde classical music, and of course we have a hell of a lot of electronic. But I think the kind of crux of it, the main focus is DJ culture, I'd say. And I like to talk about DJ culture rather than dance music because, these days like music is changing every week. There's a new genre that's popping up. It starts very local and it gets very global very quickly because of the internet. And to kind of pin your mast to a particular style and a particular sound, I think is quite myopic and can be restrictive. And actually, people like to discover. And I think discovery is really, really effective and really that's where the magic happens. When people come to Mixcloud and find great new music they wouldn't otherwise have listened to, it's inspirational, right? So we now have around about 500,000 DJs and radio presenters using Mixcloud, 10 million listeners a month, and we work with brands to create brand partnerships as our business model. So we work with brands to help them host their audio, their mixes, and use our tools to share them with their audiences.
Great, thanks. Last but not least, Mark.
Hi, excuse me. My name's Mark Williamson. I'm the Director for Artist Services at Spotify. I'm going to start off with potential panel suicide and show you a spreadsheet. Don't worry about the detail. This is the top 100 tracks that have been played on Spotify of all time, so around 4.5 years. And what I've done is I've highlighted the tracks that could be put in the EDM bucket. And 22 out of the most played songs on Spotify of all time fall into that category. So pretty much 1 in 4 streams in that area. That totals up to 1.3 billion streams of just those 22 tracks in 4.5 years. What that means really, and if you could jump onto the next slide, please. What that means is that, dance music and EDM and electronic music has really got a huge place on Spotify and a huge audience. It's taken a really nice share of the $500 million we've paid out so far. And it's going to take a nice share of the $500 million we're going to pay out to rights holders just this year alone. But I also think with Spotify in general, there's a lot of opportunity still left on the table. And I think that the electronic music world is in a unique position to really jump at that. I think that the regular release cycles, the more consistent release cycles really play well into the streaming world and this attention game that we're all playing now. And I also think the often dual roles of creator and curator really plays well in Spotify. And for me, in working in the artist team and working with managers and artists and the direct teams around them, 2013 is quite an exciting year for me because we're really starting to beef up the tools that you guys have in your hands to help crack into that 24 million person audience. So, you know, we've got this new follow stuff, which creates this connection with fans, the ability to playlist, and really share that out is starting to come to fruition. If you can just jump onto the next slide. That's all really being tied up in this kind of connection that you can create with fans now. Mobile push notifications, email notifications. We're building really our own social network within Spotify. And we're also doing really cool things around ancillary opportunities like live concerts and more. And so, yeah, hopefully we can, you know, talk a little bit about how you can use those tools to grow your careers.
Okay. So, the question I would ask first of all is, each of you, who is doing something besides your companies? Who do you admire? Who do you think is doing something interesting out there to move the ball forward, to push things out there? Let's, Carter, start with you.
Don't know how to use a mic apparently. Okay. I would say, honestly, I didn't really know a lot about the audience until we were talking about it in the back room, and I'm pretty impressed with that. I've seen a lot of artists try to do something that's, you know, I'm good friends with Amanda Palmer, and she's kind of known for this really great social engagement, and she made, you know, $1.2 million on Kickstarter last year.
And she seems to be a big part of the problem in that people look at Amanda and go, well, I'm going to do just what she did.
Right.
I'm going to imitate Amanda Palmer,
Yeah.
and I'm going to have the same. And it's this whole thing about innovating instead of imitating that seems to be...
Yeah, and the point is you can't imitate her. She didn't do that overnight. She spent years and years authentically connecting with her audience, doing ninja gigs and tweeting about everything and having this Friday night video stream she did. Like, she would do this for years and years and years. And then, you know, because she launched a Kickstarter campaign and all of those fans were really engaged, suddenly the industry said, wow, you know, look at what you can do on Kickstarter. I want to do that. And you can't just jump in and you can't buy that kind of engagement. So I think what the audience is doing is interesting because they're really thinking about how do we engage the fans. We're not just, you know, throwing a bunch of dollars at this. We're kind of, you know, one of the things I like that Oliver talked about was creating art. And I think that's what it's all about. And if your focus is on creating really compelling art, you will, over the long term, build a set of fans that when you really need money to make an album, as Amanda did, you'll get it. So,
thank you.
You know, yeah, well.
Nico?
Yeah. So I really respect companies that don't focus on opportunity but focus on problems and build things that have real utility and really think about the user or the customer at the core. And I also really respect companies that are really, really product focused, that build really, really cool products, again, that have utility rather than just thinking, you know, way too much about like clever go-to-market strategies or, you know, clever ways to throw money at
So, for example?
So, for example, some of the businesses I really love, and you mentioned them a couple of times, Kickstarter is one of my favorite businesses. I think it's a really cool platform that's genuinely disrupted a lot of sectors. And, you know, it's a real platform, right? People are building businesses off the back of it. And another similar example is Airbnb. I think Airbnb has genuinely disrupted the hotel industry and its real utility. And it's an amazing, amazing product. It's so beautiful and so simple to use.
Seth?
A litmus test for me is if I had $1 and I could put it in any private company, where would I put it? So I'd take 50 cents and put it into SoundCloud and 50 cents and put it into Songza. I think SoundCloud we all know about. It really is the default, it's the Dropbox for the music industry. I think it's going to be more and more powerful. I think there'll be ecosystems on top of it in the same way that you saw over the last 5 years or so on top of YouTube. You know, there's a virtual label kind of phenomenon where a SoundCloud account plus Twitter plus Facebook gets you everything you need. Songza is in some way the next generation after Pandora. the numbers are astonishing in terms of how fast it's growing and the level of engagement. It's a streaming service, but what it does uniquely is it's curated. And not only is it curated, but it really anticipates where you are in terms of your day. So you open it up, it says, it's Friday afternoon. Do you want driving through the woods music? Do you want going to the beach music? Or do you want, work hard in the office music without lyrics? And I think more and more, as we're seeing the curation moment kind of coming and the database moment leaving, people want less choice, not more. There's a cognitive tax that I think is plaguing people when they have to choose too many options. And I think folks like Songza and DJ-Z and others are starting to see that and take advantage of it.
Oliver, who do you admire?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about if you were to invest in something. I have never invested in a company except in my own until last week. There's a little company called Will Call out of San Francisco that I think is one of the most fascinating things I've seen. The audience has been a big driver of ticketing. We work with all of the big kind of known ticket entities in really selling tickets direct through artist channels. It, by the way, is the most efficient way to do it by 2 or 3 orders of magnitude. But this little company Will Call, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the concept of Uber. It's location-based. It's a mobile app that allows you to get a car. Basically, what Will Call is a mobile app that looks at your location and looks at interesting things that are going on around you and puts you on a list if you'd like. But more importantly, what it allows you to do is when you're at that place, it knows that you're there, and so it can offer you either to tip an artist, which, by the way, I don't know if this is, I'm sure he'll get mad at me for talking about it, but over 50% of the people that go to an event with a Will Call app tip the artist, which I think is phenomenal. And then it allows you to sell in merchandise, have back-end delivery of that merchandise, kind of curate the experience while you're there out of your mobile app. And so I think that's one of the most interesting kind of new applications out there that makes it very simple to decide what's going on in an environment and then move and then kind of complete the experience. So that's what I've been most interested in.
Is it totally?
It's totally kind of event-centric. So right now it's in San Francisco and has launched in San Francisco and New York. And it is a set of curated experiences. So it might be an art opening, it might be a music showcase, it might be at an existing club. But it really is a very neat kind of concierge application that I think will be remarkably disruptive in the live event space.
Andre?
For me, I always like going to the places where companies just aren't created yet, where you get, I'm a music geek, but I'm a non-elitist music geek, and those are my favorite type. And if you go into the wormhole of the internet, there are people who are on the cusp of understanding the ergonomics of music. And when I say the ergonomics, I mean, how does weather affect us? How do we know that track's right for right now? When I make eye contact with that person, what's the context? What's my heart rate? And I think this empathy and intimacy of music, there are people who are curating based on how I feel, what I ate, almost like coupling wine and food. And yes, that's incredibly geeky, and you probably don't want to invite that person to a dinner party, but the thing I really love is there's some insights there that go to the root of humanity's connection with music, and that is the bit you find in these tiny little forums, these tiny little blogs, and I go, when you start to understand a little bit more about the mystery and magic between how you can ergonomically connect people to new music and the experiences around that, that's amazing. I can imagine the Songzas of the world and the SoundClouds and the Spotifys migrating towards that. And I think it's just a very natural evolution because it goes back to a 20,000-year-old relationship with music.
That'd be really cool if you could get like a Nike Fit band and then tie it to that.
Totally.
That'd be interesting.
When I was really geeking out in my engineer days, we made a little software patch where it was based on your run rate, on how fast you're running, would choose tracks from your, we just mashed this together. And it was so cool because I ran faster, right? Yeah, and they do it now, but that I'm telling you, that's next phase.
There's a company called BioBeats that's doing that right now. And I don't know if they're based in LA, but I've met them in LA. I think they have a band that picks music based on your heart rate for you.
And also in terms of like the ergonomics, if that's what you want to call it, that's also actually at the heart of Pandora, because Pandora like dissects the Music Genome Project picks out like 70 or so attributes in every single track and ranks through experts. They actually rank every single track on these attributes. So I think a lot of that is already happening, and I totally agree that that kind of metadata aspect of music is really really interesting.
And Mark?
I think I'm going to keep it quite close to home and talk about a company I think that works really well across the board but specifically on Spotify as well, is Armada Music and Armin van Buuren. I really think now that music has got to be everywhere, and at the same time, if it's in one place on the web, it really should be everywhere where people want to consume it, not where you want them to consume it. Armin and Armada and all the guys over there have worked really well. So, for example, with the State of Trance Radio, which goes out online, goes out on terrestrial, goes out on satellite radio, and they used to recreate the playlist of the show on Spotify with the kind of originals, so not the mixes that they actually did on the show. And then they worked really hard to actually kind of clear that stuff and get it onto Spotify now within 24 hours of the show going out. So saying, look, we really hope you come and listen to it live online. You might listen to it in your car. You want to take it offline on your phone tomorrow. You can do that on Spotify. And what that's done, and they echo that across all of all of their different acts and so on. They really push playlists. It's helped them to build up a really connected following on Spotify. That means that Armin's got 400,000 followers on Spotify now that'll get a notification every single time he adds a track to the playlist, every time he updates A State of Trance. A State of Trance is the #1 artist playlist on Spotify, and I think the number 74 most streamed playlist on Spotify as well. And what I like about those guys is that there's no favorites. It's just getting stuff out and getting it everywhere and going where your fans are. And I think that's a really important part of across the board, really, how you get music out.
Okay, I'm going to throw mine in there real briefly. There's a company out of Toronto called Tunzi that's creating fan experiences, and it's not going backstage and meeting the artist. It's going bowling with Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, or going to an art gallery with Amanda. And basically, it creates really immersive fan experiences that connects what's happening in the digital world with what's happening out there in the real world. So I guess the first question I'd like to ask everybody as it relates to the digital debate is, we've seen, and I've been looking at some of the tweets up here, that curation is really important. We agree that people need guideposts and filters and all that. What's missing from the digital palette right now that would make this a more complete experience for the music fan?
Well, I mean, I think one of the most frustrating things is, Spotify is an amazing platform, but it has been relatively difficult to build followings. They're making a lot of changes in building collaborative playlists and others. There's a friend of mine, Scott Venner, who's just an amazing music supervisor, who's about to launch an app called Mosaic, which solves a lot of that problem. It works with Spotify and other platforms to build these collaborative playlists so that people can basically curate on the fly. Imagine it's kind of like group Instagram for music and music curation. And I think that in itself is going to be a phenomenal kind of new paradigm, because people really do rely upon curation. I mean, it's such an overused and kind of tried example, but very few people that existed in the radio world have moved into, in this kind of curation world, have moved into building real respectable followings inside of these platforms. I think they've been a little nervous or scared or restricted. And so I think when you put that in the hands of a lot of people, Spotify's first iteration of that, with, at least for me personally, was whenever I would see what someone else was listening to, I'd go to it and I'd relatively be disappointed. I actually would like that person less every time I heard what they were listening to. And so I think that there's got to be a way to solve that awkwardness. And so I'm really excited about Mosaic launching, because I think it'll be interesting to see this kind of group playlist collaboration kind of metaphor come out, because I'm always wanting to hear new music, but I really do need a filter for it, and a trusted filter. So I think that's going to be a very interesting space in the next couple of months.
Mark?
I think that's a good point. In the people that you're friends with on Facebook aren't necessarily the same people. You don't overlap on that music taste. And I think understanding, giving people the tools to identify who they are interested in, regardless of your Facebook graph, is really interesting. And that's what we're trying to do now, where we've kind of unfollowed on Spotify, specifically unfollowed all of your Facebook friends, and now we're asking you which ones do you actually want to follow. But we're doing that alongside kind of two other pillars that I think are really interesting from a curation point of view. The second is, asking about influencers. So about Scott, you can follow Scott, you can follow DJs and so on. We're also doing that a lot with algorithms, of course, and mixing those two. And the third is kind of editorial. So it's your guys like Pitchfork, it's the traditional guys coming into this world. And I think by matching that and not saying, hey, it's all about algorithms or it's all about humans is really kind of, a lot more getting back to how we kind of have traditionally discovered music, a real mix of influences.
Good. Yeah.
So I think that the best companies are really comfortable with saying what they're not. And I think that's part of curation, is not being afraid to lose users. And I think we're in an industry, at least in the tech music industry, where there's such a frenzy about getting more users and being sort of everything to everybody. It goes absolutely against the whole thesis of curation. And so I think the best services and the best progress here is going to be, whether it's Scott Venner or just people that say, look, this is who this mix or this is who this list is for, and it's not for everybody. And when people take these lines in the sand and they don't pretend to be a comprehensive database, I think you'll have lots of little tribes that are, much more engaged. One quick excerpt is, we have two advisors, and one has 10 million followers on Twitter, and one has 500,000, and both tweeted about a story that we wrote on DJs.com, and the one with 500,000 followers had 5x the clicks, because it was a tighter clan, it was a tighter tribe. And so just because you have lots of followers doesn't mean you're going to get the engagement and you're going to get the influence that you think you are.
I'd like to just add a little bit of a twist on that. I mean, I agree that what's missing is people. I think if you look at radio, radio is still popular. I hate to burst everyone's bubble about the internet, but people still listen to radio a lot. And I think one of the things that we haven't done, and I say we very generically as techies, is really understand the human connection that comes along with the radio. I'm going to bastardize a Bob Pittman quote, so I apologize in advance to him for that. But something that he said when he started MTV early on was, people don't fall in love with a jukebox, they fall in love with people. And what the radio does really well is they have DJs in the traditional sense interrupt programming periodically to talk about music that they're playing, or even to tell stupid jokes and be annoying. But they interrupt the programming and they talk to you. And I think a lot of people aren't in the mode where all they want is music. They want to have that personal connection, and it makes them feel like there's someone here, there's kind of some sense and theme behind what's going on. I mean, if you listen to Jason Bentley, he talks about stuff that he plays. And I think there's a lot of added value there that people who are very focused on algorithms and technology often tend to dismiss out of hand without really thinking about what that experience is like for a consumer.
We have time for a couple questions. Anybody's got anything they want to throw at these guys? Okay.
Hi, Matthew Charles. Just a question. Do you think it's possible to become a digital superstar without being a superstar in the physical realm?
Sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
examples?
Yeah, I mean, I think Stevie Aoki has become an internet celebrity. I think that just looking at the raw numbers of people that he performs, I mean, he's one of the hardest working people I've ever met, and he performs, I think 230 times a year. which is an amazing physical experience. But in the digital world, he has, for instance, an enormous following in Mexico and South America that he hasn't really toured to, right? He's going to, but I mean, just to see the raw numbers. And so we started seeing that trend and created this thing called Esteban Aoki, which is just a really funny, I mean, it's Steve in Spanish, and it's just a really fun, it took me a month to realize that, but it's just a really funny trope that exists inside of YouTube, and it's one of his most popular pieces of content now, but to them, he's just a digital celebrity, right? They've never seen him perform, they've never been in that aspect of him, but he really has transcended, on the internet. And I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for a lot of these artists that we work with or that we are to become media celebrities, not just music celebrities, right? I think that there's so much derivative work that occurs in this business that, clearly defining what is one of his songs is a little bit more difficult than clearly defining what he is. There you go. Clearly defining what he is as a media business. And I think that that's really fascinating to see is him as a media business and as a personality on the internet, as not just a musician.
Another example is a friend of mine who's at this conference, a guy called Luke from the UK. He comes from a little town in the British countryside called Frome, and he set up a channel on YouTube called UKF. It's now one of the biggest music channels on the internet, on YouTube. They celebrated, probably both, yeah, they celebrated over 1 billion views at some point last year. He curates dubstep music on a channel on YouTube. He has become an internet celebrity. I mean, maybe not him per se as a personality, but his channel is enormous, and he's
standing in the back of the room.
And he's standing at the back of the room.
Where is he?
So, yeah, that's definitely...
Where is he? Okay. Wow. Congratulations. So let me ask a question for all of you.
Blow your cover, Luke.
Okay. I'm sure Oliver will jump in here first, but if you didn't have the budget, but you had the wherewithal to go after digital success, let's say right now, let's say I couldn't afford to hire you. What's the 2 or 3 things that people should think about when they're putting together, when they're laying out their campaign for conquest?
Right. High concept, low fidelity, great music videos. It's the #1 answer.
Anybody else?
I would say focus on making great art and pick a channel that you feel comfortable with. So if Twitter's not your thing, but Facebook feels more comfortable, or if Tumblr feels more comfortable, pick something that you as an artist
feels
really,
authentic?
It feels authentic, because I think over the long term, that's really going to give you the best bang for your buck.
Seth?
Could you repeat the question?
The question is, what do you think about if you're an independent artist and you don't have the wherewithal to hire big guns, you're doing it yourself, what are the 2 or 3 things you should think about in terms of focusing on to, as a recipe for success?
Create a radio station, honestly, and just make it accessible through every single device.
Okay. A radio station, what, around your music?
No, just curate a stream of your own work, of other people that you respect. To Carter's point, provide some live commentary. I think there's equivalent opportunities to what's happened on YouTube. Ray William Johnson, these incredible celebrities that have regular programming. I think we can see more of that, from music artists, particularly now that we have Android, we have iPhones, we have web TV.
Okay. Andre?
For me, it's really simple. There's a very simple creative framework I use for all this. And you start with whatever you're incredibly passionate about and whatever you think could connect with people. And you apply 3 Ps to it, which is how do you make that passion more portable, potent, and personal for other people? Just start with that. It's the simplest framework. You can do it on a piece of paper, and it is amazing. It's not constrained by budget. It's only constrained by your imagination. So portable, potent, and personal.
And I'd say
Mark?
take a leaf out of the tech world and really about iteration and making sure that you're connecting with your fans really quickly, learning from them, understanding what's working with them. You can start with a small audience, but just make sure you're connecting with them as much as possible to learn. It doesn't mean releasing music every single day, but it means engaging with them and changing and figuring out what works, as opposed to waiting 5 years to release the perfect debut album.
So I'd say that actually the answer is in the question. You said, what should people focus on? The answer is just to focus and try and do less things and do the things that you do better and really well. And that's also following on from Mark's point. It's how entrepreneurs think. You know, as a startup, you can only do one thing really, really well.
Okay, and I'll throw the final word in here. I have a long career in artist development, going back to Warner Records days. I always used to say to the artists, make sure you're really comfortable in the clothes you've decided to wear, because your fans will notice if you're uncomfortable. So try and be as authentic as possible, try and be as real as possible, and remove as much artifice as you can. And then there's Lady Gaga. Thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, everyone.